So you see, most people when we're looking at, for example, abundance, you're right, absolutely right. I think the essence of the concept of abundance really speaks volume when you understand that it is touching on the uh, idea that you need to feel fulfilled emotionally and spiritually first and foremost, and as you said, feel that wealth within you before you can actually appreciate what is before you, right? And it's almost like a lot of people are being taught backwards. It's like, as you said earlier, if I have it, then I'll be happy. If I
Mhm.
meet, the man of my life or the woman of my life, I'll be happy. If I have this type of car, I'll be happy. If I have this type of house, I'll be happy. But when you have it, it doesn't change anything because you've not fulfilled truly who you are. Now, the thing is that, is it something that is it a sort of reality that can be applied to everybody? Is it everybody, every human that are to understand that this is this pathway that we're talking about that you chose to embark on? Is it for everybody, or is it reserved to just a select few? Because that's another thing. A lot of people think that it's too hard. So let me just be safe because these whole ideas seem so far fetched, so complicated, and requires so much of looking inwards that it is painful and demands too much work. Is it something that anybody can achieve? Um, yeah, that's the question, I think.
Yes, yes. The potentials of evolution exist within everyone. The seeds of evolution exist within all of us. And I not only believe that everyone has those potentials available in some form, right? Because it's what is your form, right? I
Mm,
believe, yes, we all have those potentials available, but it's what you do when you're confronted with the discomfort or the pain of evolving.
mhm.
So I had a really good question from the audience today. I had like 30 different questions. We went in going, and this woman was talking about realizing that for her own evolution, she needed to leave a certain situation. And
Mhm.
she was already anticipating the pain of leaving the situation. And how
Mhm.
many
Mhm.
times do we do that, right? We anticipate
Yes.
all the
Yeah.
things. And
Mhm.
again, we want to, it's this, again, it's that sense of stability. We want to feel like we have some semblance of control in a world that is
Mhm.
under our control as individual forms of
Absolutely.
human consciousness. Okay.
Mhm.
So we want to feel like we've got, and I find this phenomenon quite bizarre because if you consider it, we're basically trusting, talking about confidence earlier, right? We're trusting that
Mhm.
confidence comes from confidere, with trust, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
When you
Mhm.
have
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
trust with like 99.9999 some odd percent of what's occurring within us and outside of us, we
Mhm.
have that trust. We have to in order to survive. So, for
Yes.
example, I'm trusting right now that the
Mhm.
trillions of biochemical reactions occurring in my body this very second are going to continue to do what they need to do for me to
Yes.
continue to inhabit this form. I'm
Mhm.
trusting that my brain is going to continue to send electrical impulses down to my arms, my legs, saying to move in certain ways, right? I'm trusting that my heart is going to continue to beat. I don't sit there and say, "Oh my God, let me develop a 5-year plan for my vital functions." Like I don't do that. It would be insane, right? And it's the
It
same
will
thing
be
with
impossible.
it's the same with what's happening outside, right? If you look at it, like
Yeah.
you're not, for instance, we're trusting that the sun is going to continue to rise and set every day, right?
Mhm.
And do all that we need from the sun to survive. We're trusting that. We don't go to bed at night, right, Armani, and say, is it going to come up tomorrow? Is it not going to come up? Is it going to come up? Is it not going to come up, right? But with this 0.0000 whatever 1% that we try to
Mhm.
control and manipulate, we do that so we can have some, like I said, some semblance of in an ever-changing world, some semblance of something that we can like attach ourselves to. And that piece is the piece that I'm continually challenging because when instead with that we also are able to say, I trust. I
Mhm.
don't
Mhm. Mhm.
understand
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
I might not even like it, but I'm going to trust.
Yeah.
That's when we start
Yeah.
to be able to open up to some of these potentialities. And to your question, my answer would be yes, it is available to everybody, but you got to, I'm hesitant to use the word surrender because it can be a little bit tricky for people, but you got to
Yeah. Yeah. It
relax.
can
You
be.
got to relax. Even that can be a little bit whatever, but it's like, just relax, just trust that life is working out in your favor. It was Einstein who said, you know, your most important decision, and I'm paraphrasing, but your most important decision is whether you're in a friendly universe or a hostile universe. That's your most important decision.
Mm-hmm.
Are you in a friendly
Mm-hmm.
place or a hostile place?
Mm.
Are you going to trust that all
Or
of these things that are
yeah.
happening, even if they're painful, that that's required for your growth? Like my daughter, when
Mm.
she was real little, her legs, she would have literally growth pains, and I'd be up in the night, and I'd be massaging her legs, and she'd be
Mm-hmm.
crying, and be like, "Baby, you're growing."
Mm-hmm. It
But
hurts.
it didn't make it any less painful. Growth is painful,
No.
man.
It is painful. It
So
is
that's
very
why
painful.
people choose it because they're like they're going to be in pain anyway. You're like we're in pain regardless, but we try to avoid it.
Yo, what you said is so deep and so true. I think that we previously spoke about that, and it's true on so many aspects. I think that pain is necessary because through pain you forge character, you forge personality. Sometimes it can also, by forging it doesn't mean it's always good, because you can become immune and sometimes even insensitive to certain. You become insensitive to certain things that, as they say, life makes you tough, but you you be, learning to be tough while remaining some sort of gentle uh, approach to things is not easy, because often, for example, as a man or as men, we are, for example, uh, regarded as, provided this, you got to be strong, man up, you be good, come on, yo, you gotta, so these are traits and characters that, honestly, I'm not saying that I'm against. I think it's great, but I think that a lot of it doesn't come with enough um, pedagogy, and there's not enough breaking things down for young men, for example, and for that matter as well, in a different manner, but almost the same for women as well. I think adults are throwing informations or we are throwing each other some informations without giving context and some level of explanation that will allow somebody to eventually um, be able to process the violence of the change and of the growth in a way that makes it less difficult, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, I remember as a kid, my father was very strict. He was extremely strict, and he didn't tolerate any nonsense. Um, Nowadays, uh, that would be considered as, child abuse or whatnot, but it wasn't. It was just, he was strict, and you would get a serious correction if you were acting up. But the truth of the matter is that because I had all these people around me when I was in Central African Republic, from the helpers at the house, etc., telling me, look, this is your father is not doing this because he doesn't like you, he doesn't love you. It's actually because he loves and cares for you, and he wants you to be able to be a respectable man in the future, because he's not eternal, he's not here forever, and he has to prepare you for the toughness of life. And that helped me, because he was not telling me these things, he was just being like, you do as I say, right? But because I had this aspect of um, you know contextualization of what was the reason behind these corrections, then it allowed me to be more, I wouldn't say I didn't appreciate it, but I accepted it in a much more um, understanding way, should I put it this way. So you're right. I think, oh God, it's such a deep thing when we think about it. Our perception on success, on what it is to be true to yourself, what it is to respect yourself, what it is. So all these concepts and these ideas are ever more so complicated to grasp nowadays, even more so than before, I would say. But what do you think?
I'm not certain if nowadays it's more than before, but you brought up something that is so vitally important to growth and to evolution, and in my mind, which is integration of all that you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
We both grew up in very strict environments. My father also had a very heavy hand, and we receive a lot of conditioning, as women, or as young, whatever, as females and males, we receive a lot of conditioning. And essentially what that conditioning says is you can't be all of you. All of you is not welcome here. And it doesn't matter what guise that takes on, in the sense of, man up, or be softer, be sweeter, be kind, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whatever that
Mm-hmm.
conditioning is, it basically says you're not allowed to feel everything you feel. And especially as a young male, in our
Mm-hmm.
societies
Mm-hmm.
all over the world, it's like you're not allowed to feel what you feel. And I know for young women, it was like, for me, first, I wasn't allowed to feel what I felt, because I was too
Mm-hmm.
emotional, I was too whatever, all the things, right? And so a big part of what we have to do, I believe, for ourselves is
Mm-hmm.
to integrate all those parts and to say, you know what, all of that's okay. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
all of it. If we look at any kid, right,
Mm-hmm.
a young child, almost all
Yeah.
young children, unless they're in seriously situations that are very dire,
Mm-hmm.
most kids are kind of all over the map, right? They're like this wild weather situation that is changing by the second, and you have no
Yeah.
idea what to expect, right? And that is allowed until a certain point. And then all of a sudden,
Mm.
like, oh, it's not allowed. And then a lot of us creatively start to find ways to express all that we are. Or this is where you
Mm.
see lots of times where women go into business and become very, what would be typically considered sort of masculine. And not that I want
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
necessarily
No,
gender.
but
I don't
yeah,
know
it's a
if
way
that's
to
a
look at
word,
it. Yeah.
if I'm making it up. But
Yeah.
like, you'll get these cases of like, oh, but I am also that. And so when you can start to say, I am all of it, that's actually
Mm-hmm.
too where we can move into this place of beautiful evolution, and what you were talking about of starting to see more of our potentials. And a lot of us, will create artistically things that allow us to express things that we're not allowed, or we don't feel like we're allowed to express. Why? Enough
Mm.
already. Let's end all of that sort of like, and not that I'm saying people should not have any sort of, and this is the beautiful thing about growing up and maturing, is like, you can still be
Mm-hmm.
mature and have a mature response to things, and be allowed to express all that you are in safe places and safe ways. And whatever that looks like if I need to cry for half an hour, that's okay. I'm just feeling that emotion, right? If I'm a male or a female, or transgender, whatever,
Yeah,
however
but
you.
that's in an ideal world. You and me both agree that a man crying is not necessarily a great display of stability and strength. Unfortunately, most of the time being weaponized against the men who eventually might
You're right.
show.
Yeah.
That is. I mean, that sounds great. And trust me, I've
I
tried it
know.
before in front of certain females. Lord have mercy. God knows how much I regret that.
Well, you know what? Here's what I'll say to
I
that.
don't regret it, but I felt so I felt so little. What I mean, I was made to feel little and insignificant because I had dared to express a certain level of sensitivity and need for just trusting that I could be in a safe space, in enough of a safe space to express at that specific moment a level of need to just let go a bit.
Yeah.
No, I mean, funny enough, when my mother died, um, I could only cry for 2 days. Um, I was not given the permission to, yeah, to more than that.
But you know who needs to give you permission, right?
It's true, but the thing is that it's not a question that at a certain point, you've cried so much. I'm like 3 days, but bottom line is that it wasn't more than four, and I remember saying it. There was a series of events that made it so I had to just okay, take control over the situation. I had to lead, and crying and feeling all of these emotions, which were absolutely normal and legitimate, were not going to help make things move.
Mm,
So I knew that I had to take upon myself to just, you know, as they say, man up, you know,
mm,
and then go. You know what I mean? And make things happen. And I'll deal with the emotions afterwards. But right now, I need to be strong. I need to be strong for everyone else because, if I do like everyone else, I'll go. Nothing's going to happen. And I think that it's a trait of character that indeed is usually tends to be discouraged by a lot of people who wants to indeed vouch strongly for the idea that you need to express absolutely no matter what. And yes, great, I understand that, but sometimes life calls for a certain level of courage that requires for you to go through the hurt without expressing too much concern for it, and
mm,
accepting that this is the price you have to pay in order for things to move forward. And then once things are being aligned and everything is taken care of the way they need to be, then you're like, all right, guys, I've done my part. Now I need time for me.
mhm,
Um, at least that's the way I had to. And a lot of the time in my life, it has been like that. So I don't know any other ways, but I do understand the necessity to express emotions and to express um, to let this flow of energy pass through,
mm.
and not necessarily reject it. So it's not about rejecting it, but it's about containing it and allowing the moment that it has to be. Okay, this is the moment for that. Now we need to, you know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah, well, first I have to say that you have so much courage, which is one of the things that struck me when we were first speaking, to even be able to talk about this, even be able to say and just to be open to be so vulnerable to say, oh, I tried that and it didn't work out, and even the vulnerability, obviously, to begin with, to open up to that in relationship, right?
Yeah.
But the real relationship I think that we need to heal is the relationship with ourselves, because then it really doesn't even matter how. mm, hmm, whether we get validation of that from outside, whether that's perceived as okay or not, it becomes less relevant. And actually, ironically, it it gives other people permission to, and it starts to shift things for other people in a way that's like, it's okay. But I also understand what you're saying of, there are those moments where you have to really kind of rally. You've got to get through something and you rally and you do it. And just like you said,
100%.
it's really important to do what you did after that, is saying, yeah, and you know what, now time out.
Yeah.
I need some space for me.
Hmm.
And just like you did, going within and saying, I'm gonna experience this. I'm gonna experience all of it. I'm not gonna hide from it. I'm not gonna say I'm stronger than it. I'm not gonna whatever,
Yep.
all the stuff that we can do as women and men, because we all do it. Um,
Absolutely.
is I'm going to feel all that, and then allowing yourself to feel it over and over and whenever you need to, so that it actually can start to dissipate. Lots of people think sometimes, or lots of times people think that a lot of our problems are psychological, but a lot of the times it's actually stuck stagnant energy in our bodies that we're not
Exactement.
releasing because we're taught, hold it in, keep it down, buck up,
Mm.
whatever it is that we're taught that we're supposed to do, instead of just allowing that energy to move. It's got to move. It's got to find a
Yeah.
place to go. If it stays in you, it will create malaise. It'll create problems, right? Like, that's what happens.
Absolutely.
So it's really
Absolutely.
important to do, I think, precisely what you did. Yeah.
Well, this takes us right into the conversation of epigenetics and these amazing powers of the mind, and how it can be a blessing and a curse at the same time, because we again, as you said, very very well, who gives who the permission? You give yourself the permission or not. So just as much as you create the disease that are within you, and you create, basically you create, I wouldn't, so uh, don't take to the absolute T what I'm saying. Not you, Courtney, but I mean people, listening and watching the show. But it's like, we create a lot of the environment that facilitates a lot of the shit that happens in your life, in our lives,
Mhm.
uh, consciously or unconsciously. So can you can you can you, as the mind body coach that you are, and that you've trained to become, you've embraced, because it's not even you train, but it's a calling. You responded to your calling. Now, allowing the audience that's listening to us right now, telling a little bit more about the impact of these energies, and not allowing these negative things inside us to go somewhere and
Mhm.
being stagnant, how it affects us. I mean, please elaborate. I mean,
Sure.
this is
Okay.
your area
Okay,
of expertise.
this could go on. We'll start. I'll see what I can explain in a way that people can start moving some of this in a different
Exactly.
direction, moving the boat in a different direction. So, okay. So you've mentioned a lot about the mind, right?
Mhm.
And the mind is kind of a small part. Like, we live in a society that has really glorified the rational mind and glorified the thinking and rational thinking and all of that.
Mhm.
But if you consider it for a moment, right,
Mhm.
the average person is having between what, like 50 to 70 thoughts per day, right?
Mhm.
70,000 thoughts per day. Okay. And for most people, those are the same thoughts every day.
Yeah.
Right. And so then they're looking at their lives and like, whoa, just to your point of like, okay, how much are you creating, again, consciously, unconsciously? The thing that's important to realize is there's a few things that are important to realize. One of them is that we don't even know the origin of thought, right? So don't blame yourself if this thought is in your head and
Mhm.
say like, oh, I've got to push it out and I can't, and I shouldn't be thinking negative and all this stuff.
Mm.
We don't know. With all of the advances in neuroscience, they actually don't know the origin of thought, right? I can't
Mhm.
point to a part of the brain like the prefrontal cortex and say thought originates there. I don't know. We don't know. They're electrical impulses that arrive, right? And we
Mhm.
either attach to them and we give them a specific meaning, and we
Yeah.
attach to them emotionally. And by emotionally, really what I mean is, I want to be careful about this too, is it's a sensation that's provoked that actually goes into your body. Okay. So
Mm.
the
Mm.
sensation, usually, if it's a thought that we would call negative or a certain kind of frequency of thought, will provoke an emotional response or a sensation response. That what does that do from your mind? Then you're actually sending neuropeptides down into the different organs of your body, and it's really fascinating if you look at brain body scans, for example, because you can see with a certain type of thought
Let,
where
let,
it
let
is
me let me
lodged.
let me one second.
Yeah,
From your mind, you send, can you, neuropeptides. What is that? What does that consist of?
great
And how
question.
does it work?
It's basically a chemical release.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So imagine like you're like, those movies. It's like you're literally releasing this chemical, which is called a neuropeptide, right? You're releasing it down into different organs. And what happens is it gets lodged in there. It gets lodged in these organs. So you have to find a way to actually, like we were saying, release it.
Mm-hmm.
And I work with different modalities to do it, but there's some really simple things that we can talk about in a minute. But it's
Yes.
really important to understand, like, okay, are these thought impulses, are they the master? Can you take that? Can you
Yeah.
actually decide that when a thought comes, you're gonna either let it go, or you're going to, transmute? Is there a part of you, however you want to call that part of you, that you can actually become the witness, and you can watch it and you can decide what to do with that thought? So you
Mm-hmm.
start to take some of that, and I don't want to call it control. You start to take your power back. You start to take your power back. You start to direct the mind, which has gotten out of control for most people. There's a beautiful saying in Italian. They say la mente mente. It's the same word for mind and lie. The mind lies.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this isn't true for everyone, right? It's really just,
I like
have you
that.
let the mind run havoc? Are you paying any attention to the thought impulses that are coming? Or are you just having 70,000 thought impulses and thinking, and not thinking? Second most sold book, I believe, and I may be wrong, maybe it's the third, but I think it's the second most sold book in the history of books, is
Mm-hmm.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Voilà.
Have you ever read
See,
this book?
I think
Yeah.
I heard something similar to what you're
It's
saying. Yes.
always cited in success literature. It's like, right? And what I always say to people is, okay, so if everyone's reading that, or if everyone's reading, I've never read the Secret, but if everyone's reading this stuff, well, then why isn't everybody rich?
Exactly.
And the reason why everybody, like I said, I mean, the abundance, the knowing that you're all of it and it's all available to you. Okay. If everyone's reading these, what are they missing? And when I talk about the book Think and Grow Rich, I say there's 2 words that are implicit in that title. And it's learn to think. Learn to think. Learn to use your mind. Now, this is not an easy process, but I will tell you that it's very simple. And what I mean by that is if you've been allowing that function or those electrical impulses to run amok and to sort of like do whatever, they're sending you all over the place, you don't have clarity, it's kind of like, oh, and there's all this mess and whatever, okay? And the world is bad, and it's like we said, Einstein, the world is a hostile place, right? It's like if you're allowing that to kind of run amok, well then, yeah, you're going to see results in your life that don't necessarily feel very comfortable. Okay. So starting to understand how you can start to direct that process a little bit, and we can talk about that in a minute, but also how you start to release a lot of what you've been holding in your body so that you can do that. Because I don't want to use the word reprogramming, because the mind is an ecosystem. Like the most recent discoveries in neuroscience actually demonstrate, right, that the mind is more of an ecosystem. So it's not like, oh, you have this profile or there's a specific part of it. So not that I want to get too much into the science and derail us from
but it's okay. It's okay. Drop it like it's hot. Because it's hot.
Oh my God. I want to get to people to a place where they can actually start.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, I know I've got to get back to a conference pretty soon, and you got to
absolutely. Yeah, your time is very counted. So yes, let's get to it.
But so first is you go into the body and you realize, okay, how do I start releasing? How do I start releasing some of the remnants of these thought impulses that are still active and they're still impacting me in ways that are uncomfortable? How do I start to release them? Okay. And there are many different ways, but there are a couple that I find really profound that have really helped me. And one is starting to really, there's that cliche, it's kind of a cliche, but cliches are cliches for a reason, right? It's like, open your heart, right? And I do an exercise with people where it's like, they're literally opening their heart. I mean, the literal movement of just letting your heart guide you. And I'm not talking, the physical, I'm not talking about let your heart guide you. I'm talking about physically opening your heart to the front, opening your heart to the back, starting to just let your heart have a say. The electromagnetic field around your heart is so many, many, many times stronger than the electrical field here. Why are we not tapping? This is a mind. We were talking about it all, right? This has its own set of neural circuitry. It is ridiculously powerful, but we just opening it up, letting it move you, not you moving it, letting it move you.